will be needed for renewable energy deployment and grid infrastructure, etc., in order to maintain energy security. And the third reason is, or the third objective is that finance is needed to support just transition measures, including worker reskilling, social protection, and economic diversification in coal-dependent regions. In Asia, already a couple of financing mechanisms are in place or currently emerging, and I try to organize or categorize those a bit in those three pillars that you can see here on the slide. The first one is blended and concessional finance, and yeah, this is basically where public or concessional capital is used to reduce investment risks and attract private finance. And a key example is the Asia Development Bank's energy transition mechanism, or in short, ETM, which aims to support the early retirement of coal plants while helping finance cleaner replacement energy systems. Another important approach is the development of country-level transition partnerships. I guess most of you have heard of it. So it's basically the Just Energy Transition Partnerships, or in short, the JETP programs. And I think Indonesia is, for example, already part of it. Vietnam has also a JETP. And JETP aims to combine public finance, multilateral support, and private investment commitments in order to accelerate national transition pathways while also addressing social impacts. And I put the last pillar, under regulatory and market frameworks, as many Asian countries are developing sustainable finance taxonomies, transition finance frameworks, or also carbon market mechanisms. And these frameworks basically help define which projects are considered credible and bankable transition investments and aim to guide financial flows towards cleaner energy systems and reduce uncertainty for investors. So all of these are important mechanisms, but not even some of them are experiments, but their long-term effectiveness will definitely depend on implementation and whether financing actually reaches transition projects and affected communities. And this also leads us already to the challenges.
Hi, Eileen. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you have 1 more minute.
Yes, for the first part, right? For the setting scene part. I'm almost wrapping up. So
Oh, okay, cool.
yeah. So yeah, for the challenges, as I said, even though these mechanisms do exist and are being used, challenges remain and financing gaps still exist across Asia. And here, important barriers include, I will not mention all of those, but they include, for example, policy uncertainty or infrastructure limitations or high cost of capital. And in many cases, the challenge is therefore not simply the availability of capital, but how to channel capital toward credible, investable, and socially inclusive transition pathways. So this shows that financing the transition is not only about supporting the phase out of fossil fuels, it's rather about equally financing the future energy system. And yeah, I don't know if I should directly move on to the second part, the domestic financing part.
Yeah, I'm very sorry. In the interest of time, we have so many speakers today. So
Okay.
maybe we can try to save it later for a Q&A. So I will ask the participants to directly ask questions, and then you can elaborate further on that on the
Okay.
Q&A session. What about that?
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. I'm very sorry for that. All right. So it was a very a good set of stage, right, in the beginning, that the importance of not only phasing out the coal fleet, but also to in the future to equally transitioning to renewable energy. Thank you very much. And for the participants, you can start writing down your questions in the Q&A section. If you can't find it in the bottom line, you can click the three dots and find the Q&A and just write your questions. You don't have to wait until the session. to end. You can start writing them from now so we can select the best questions later. All right, for the session two, we have Miss Ajeng Rahmatika Dewi Andayani from the Indonesian Environment Fund. And Ajeng is a climate finance and sustainable development specialist with extensive experience in environmental financing, climate diplomacy, and international climate negotiations. Today, she will discuss Indonesia's strategies in financing just energy transition, as well as the role of Indonesian Environment Fund in mobilizing and catalyzing climate finance. Ajeng, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Leah. But before, may I know how many times you give to all speakers? Sorry,
I
because
think 5 minutes, right?
5 minutes. Okay, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Ajeng, you're still muted.
Sorry. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you before for the introduction, and also apologize from us because our director cannot make it the presentation for this afternoon. So I will represent our director. Sorry. So from the letter that you guys give to us, the subject that you want to request to us present regarding the financing, the opportunity, and also challenge for the just transition financing. But before that, maybe a little background regarding what is IF. So IF is Indonesian's agency under the Ministry of Finance, and we are support Indonesia commitment also for the reduction of GHG emission. And this is kind of our portfolio. Indonesia Environment Fund. We manage fund from donor, philanthropy, private, state budget. But that makes our unique because we have 5 thematics programs from the AFOLU, and also one of our thematics related to just and affordable clean energy. So you can see from the presentation for the just affordable and clean energy, we have some project, but 2 of the project already done in some 4 years ago, but the one's project LCDI is still exists right now. I will explain later, but the most interesting for me, because the topic regarding the just transitions, our institution have 12 safeguards. Like you can see in the left in the right side, there are 12 safeguards that also encourage the just transition principles, like for the labor working condition, also for the community, social equality, gender equality, and also for the indigenous people. And I will skip this, and this is the energy sector portfolio. Nah, this is the one thing that may be related to issue for today's. Right now, IF cooperation with Asian Development Bank, we are get a grant from Asian Development Bank to establish the platform development for women-led just transition. So this platform, like a technical support strengthen women participation, leadership, and also want to establish a coordination between a national level, multi-stakeholder dialogue to promote inclusive gender impact from the just transitions. Like you see, there are 3 output based on this project. The first institutional multi-stakeholder platform, campaign, and also project management. That's unique from this project is we encourage how the gender responsive of just transition will be impact in Indonesia, and also in establish this platform. We will also coordinate not only with government, but also in the local level with CSO, NGO, local government. We will piloting this project in maybe 2 regions in Indonesia, but still coordinate until now with Asian Development Bank, and also with the ministry that have their function of the energy sectors. And For the next slide is maybe just an example, like I said before, the examples project that related to energy that already done by our institutions. The first like SAF, Sustainable Energy Fund. So this is an incentive financial for user solar PV rooftop, coordination with PLN and also supported by Jeff. The total of these beneficiaries that already get this incentive among across Indonesia. And also maybe this is not related directly to the just transition, but IF also have supported by World Bank to develop enabling ecosystem. Yeah, there is enabling ecosystem to designing, piloting, implementing the carbon pricings that will have Indonesia when Indonesia, especially for the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resource, and Ministry of Industry, when they are ready to jump to the carbon trading in Indonesia ecosystem. I think, yeah, that's all presentation for me. If there is any question, we will discuss in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ajeng. Later we can go deeper on the question and answer session. Actually, there is already one question for you in the Q&A chat, so you might want to read that first. All right, so it's my mistake. Very sorry for that. Miss Eileen has one more presentation to show. I'm sorry. So you
No
have 10 minutes now. I will not bother you.
don't worry at all. I hope you can see my screen again.
Not yet,
No, I think
on
it's
my end
starting.
at least. Yes. All right.
Perfect. Um, so the second part of my presentation is basically about the role of domestic finance in just energy transition, lessons learned from South Korea. So I'm also based in South Korea, and my main focus is actually looking into South Korea. So I'm trying to give you a bit of an overview of the current situation in Korea. And yeah, I'll be focusing on coal as this is one of the biggest financing challenges for the country as well. Um, so Korea remains heavily dependent on coal with around 60 coal power units and nearly 40 gigawatt still in operation. And these coal assets are concentrated particularly in three regions, which you can see on the map here, meaning that the coal transition is also here closely linked to regional economies, employment, and energy security. But at the same time, Korea is currently at a critical momentum point for its energy transition as there is growing political and international momentum. And for that, let me go to the next slide. Yeah. You may have heard that Korea joined the Powering Past Coal Alliance last year and committed to phasing out coal by 2040. But that's basically not the only momentum, as in context of the presidential elections last year, President Lee announced several pledges. I'll only name a few, but I put more on the slide as well. So those include, for example, expanding solar and offshore wind deployment, establishing an energy highway by 2040 through grid expansion, or creating RE100 industrial clusters. So a lot of good opportunities to work on the energy transition. And we can also see that Korea's coal transition is already partly reflected in existing policy planning. So of the 60 coal units currently operating, 39 units are already included in the 11th Basic Electricity Plan and expected to be phased out by 2040, and the remaining 21 units are expected to be addressed in the upcoming 12th Basic Electricity Plan by the government. And additionally, there is also a KGX guideline coming or being published soon, and this is also expected to support industrial decarbonization, coal transition, renewable energy expansions, which should then also be in favor of finance guidelines and frameworks. Institutionally, the establishment of the MCE, the new ministry, is also significant because it brings climate, environment, and energy governance closer together under one institutional framework, suggesting increasing policy coordination around Korea's energy transition. So the key challenge is no longer whether Korea should actually transition away from coal, but how to finance the transition in a credible and social just way. In this context, SFOC did an analysis a couple of years ago to see or to analyze the cost of phasing out Korea's coal power plants. And it showed that coal could actually be phased out by 2035 or 2030 with not too much investment. But as I mentioned earlier, financing needs to go far beyond compensation for just coal assets alone, as it is also needed for early retirement of coal plants, renewable energy expansion, and grid modernization, and much more all at the same time. One major contradiction is that Korea's financial sector still remains heavily invested in fossil fuels. So I put the numbers here that in 2024, around 130 billion US dollar was still channeled into fossil fuels. 57 billion US dollars of that went into coal, while only around 18 billion US dollar went into renewables. So the challenge is therefore not necessarily a lack of capital, it might also partly, but there is also a challenge in terms of direction and allocation of capital. But here lies also an opportunity, in our opinion, in redirecting domestic public finance away from fossil fuels and toward clean energy transition, as public finance can de-risk renewable energy projects and also crowd in private investments and then send long-term market signals to financial markets. And I also listed a few actors here in the process for Korea that might be very important, like the National Pension Service, the Korea Development Bank, and also public climate and transition funds. And yeah, Korea is already developing a number of financing tools and policy mechanisms, which include green finance policies, or also the K taxonomy. And as I mentioned, some of those funds. And to give you a concrete example, recently a 390 megawatt offshore wind project was selected as the first project under the National Growth Fund, and around 1 billion US dollar in public finance support was allocated to this project, which signals a growing role for public finance in scaling up renewable energy investment. But despite growing momentum, major financing challenges are still remaining also in Korea. Looking, for example, on the right side at the Climate Response Fund. Also, the Korean government announced plans to mobilize around 10 billion US dollars annually for the Climate Response Fund. It's definitely not enough, and it's also not really diverse at the moment. For that reason, I put here a kind of a dilemma, because the scaling up of green finance requires difficult political and economic decisions, such as strengthening the ETS, phasing out fossil fuel subsidies, or introducing stronger carbon pricing and potentially expanding sovereign green bond issuance. But each of those also comes with political and economic trade-offs, which I put here, as they can create, for example, industrial competitive concerns, political resistance, and fiscal pressure. And Korea is also a traditionally it follows a fiscally conservative approach and remains very cautious about significantly increasing public debt. I'm almost at the end. I just wanted to show you what we're currently looking into from SFOC side. We're looking into sovereign green bonds and look into whether this might be a good opportunity for scaling up finance in Korea, and if this might then also be applicable to other countries. The reason for us looking into this is that globally 38 countries have already issued sovereign green bonds to scale up green finance. And Japan, for example, plans to issue around 13 billion US dollars over 10 years. And for Korea as well, sovereign green bonds could be a dedicated refinancing instrument for renewable energy expansion and also grid infrastructure and coal transition, and then also the just transition support measures. We actually have recently published a report about this, so that's why I put this here. I thought this might make it a bit easier. Yeah, I'll wrap up my presentation here. So we can basically see that Korea's just energy transition challenge is also an increasingly financial, institutional, and political challenge. And even though Korea already has strong industrial capacity, advanced financial institutions and growing policy momentum, the central question now is more whether domestic finance can be redirected quickly enough away from fossil fuel, lock in, and toward financing a just and accelerated energy transition. So that's now finally from my side.
All right, thank you so much. That was very insightful presentation from Eileen and for helping us better understand the broader regional financing landscape as well as South Korea's experiences and challenges, yeah, that maybe other shared by other nations in Asia. And also your presentation nicely highlights how financing mechanism, institutional coordination, and political commitment are deeply interconnected in shaping transition pathways. Thank you so much for that. And this is a message from the organizer. If you are media here and you would like to have a direct quotes from the speakers, please kindly ask for checking or approval from the speakers before being used. You can either contact them individually, or if you don't have their contact, you can contact the organizer for that. Thank you so much. And for next, we have Miss Putih Faranisa from PT SME. Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, Miss Putih is currently leads energy transition initiatives and strategic partnership at PT SME and has extensive experience in infrastructure financing and renewable energy development. Today, she will discuss the role of state-owned enterprises in financing just energy transition in Indonesia. And thank you very much for joining. And please go ahead. You have 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us, PTSMI, for this event. So, from our side, my name is Farah. I'm representing PTSMI in the session today. So, we're going to talk about how PTSMI's role in financing the just energy transition in Indonesia. So, maybe first, I'll start with the profile of PTSMI, so who we are and what we do. So PTSMI, it's a Indonesian national financing institutions. We are 100% owned by the government of Indonesia through the Ministry of Finance, whereby our role is to become like a sustainable development agent to enhance the nation's welfare. So our mission is to be a strong catalyst for supporting the welfare of the nation and also to be the leading driver in accelerating the infrastructure development. So from our side, actually, we have three main business pillars. So the first is corporate financing. So corporate financing is the financing product that we provide for like other and other companies. It can be another like private entities, private companies, or it can also be other like state-owned enterprises. And in addition to that, we also have our public financing instrument. So the public financing instrument is a loan facility for regional government, municipal government, and also including like other public institutions like BLU, BUMD, BUMD, and so on. And the third is we also have advisory and project development role. So we work as financial and investment advisory, financial arrangers for PPP. We also provide technical assistance and capacity building. So in regards to the sector that SMI is eligible to work on, so we're mainly working on the infrastructure sector. You can see here like on the right side of the slide. So we can provide the support both like the financing or also the other kind of support on transportation, road, irrigations, telecommunications, water, and I think the one most related to the discussions today, like electricity sector, like renewable energy, and also energy conservations, and also battery, like electric vehicle. In addition to that, on the social infrastructure, we are also eligible to support health facilities, educational facilities, and so on. So moving on, I think so in addition to the main activities that has been described before in the previous slide, so in 2022, PT SMI was also mandated to become the, we call it the manager for the energy transition mechanism, a country platform. This is a mandate that we get from the Ministry of Finance, Indonesia, with the aim for SMI to act as an entity to provide and mobilize the financing that is needed for the effort of energy transition in Indonesia. Here, I think in this slide you can see like how we work. So we have a steering committee within the Ministry of Finance and also other related ministries. And so in this, as the country platform manager, we work together with our partners. So it can be like other like MDBs, banks, international organizations, development agencies, as well as philanthropies. And we also coordinate together with the JETP secretariat. I think now the name is the JDU, the JETP Delivery Unit, and also the Task Force of Energy Transition and Green Economy under the Coordinating Ministry of Economic Affairs. So we are supporting 5 main areas basically within this role. So of course, we support the renewable energy accelerations, and then we also work on the coal phase out, transmission and distribution, decarbonization, and also the carbon side. So since the role is basically to help mobilize the financing and support through also like including blended finance efforts, you can see here like below the partners that have been already working together with PTSMIs, and there are also several initiatives that we've been doing since the assignment back in 2022. Moving on here, just to give you like a sense of how PTSMI is committed to support energy transition and climate related projects in Indonesia. As you can see here, like I think so basically, since 2019, PTSMI has stopped financing new coal-fired power plant. Right now, as you can see here, like on the chart on the right side, so the trend is dropping. So we're not financing any new coal-fired power plant anymore. So this is just, I think, the remaining commitment that we have done before, and just on the repayment period right now. But on the other side, in contrast to the declining portfolio of the coal-fired power plant, as you can see, we've been increasing our portfolio quite a lot on the climate-related projects. So this is including new and renewable energy, water sanitations, and also urban transportations. So you can see basically like on the overall PTSMI's portfolio, 20% is climate-related projects, as you can see here in the chart. So under renewable energy, you can see the highest portion, I think now is we have like biomass, mini hydro, geothermal, but we also have solar PV and also wind and other kinds of renewable energy projects. On the next slide, so talking about the blended finance in PTSMI as the ATM country platform also. So this is the different instruments that we can provide. So first of all, we can become your knowledge partner corporations, because SMI we can also provide like not only financial advisory, but we can also do like ESG advisory. And then on the blended finance structure, we have different kind of instruments, as you can see here, like a project development facility. We do like convening, capacity building. We can also provide the risking and credit enhancement, and of course the financing facilities, and we can also do like equity investment. So this is the different kind of products for us. How to deploy this, it really depends on the type of cooperations and the project that we're working with. So through this blended finance mechanism, we identify what kind of instrument that is needed and how we best structure the projects to make it viable and feasible. Next, so this is just several examples. I think this towards the last slide is just several examples of what SMI has done in terms of this. So first of the first example here, so we have provided like a green loan or to PTPLN before. It's actually a syndication loan between PTSMI and several other banks. And the next, another example is here. So this is a mini hydro project whereby we combine the loan from BTSMI with a de-risking instrument. It's an investment grant from the UK government under the UK Mentari program. So we can see here that by introducing these blended finance structures, the project that was initially only marginally feasible becomes feasible under this support. Next here is another project also on the floating solar PV project. So here we combine the loan from PTSMI with the de-risking incentive from the philanthropies, JAP, as well as so the de-risking incentive that has been provided is first is to cover like the environmental and social cost. And in addition to that, we also support like the social and environmental development for this project. So this is a bit of the example of the just transition aspect that we're going to do in this project to cover the social environmental impact. So we identify who are the direct beneficiaries and also indirect beneficiaries, and then we also identify potential activities that we can do within an area of this project, in addition to the loan facility that we provided. So the last slide, regarding our cooperations with ADB, we also have been supported by ADB, more specifically to support the just transition framework within PTSMI. So before, PTSMI has already implemented like this 10 standard on this environmental and social safeguard, which we implement on all of the project that is being financed by PTSMI. So now what we're doing is that we're under the technical assistance support from the ADB, we're going to develop a just transition framework from PTSMI. So the aim is that later on, the just transition framework will be integrated into the overall environmental, social, and governance policy within PTSMI. So I think this is to show that what we do is not only the financing part, but we are trying to ensure that the financings that we provide is compliant with the environmental and social safeguard, and also think on the next step, we will be also in line with the just transition framework. So I think that's my last slide. Hopefully, I'm right on time. Back to you, Miss Leah. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. You are. Thank you so much for that. And that was a very insightful um, um, views on Indonesia's energy transition agenda, yeah, and how PTSM is role in this. And I think your presentation also reminds us that achieving a just transition requires not only policy ambition, but also strong implementation, institutions, and financing coordination mechanisms. Thank you so much for that. All right. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we can continue on the first Q&A session because we have to break those into two parts. The first one, if you have any questions for the first three speakers, please write them down right now. And then later we will have another a second question and answer session for the last two speakers. I have several questions that directed to the three speakers right now. The first one is directed to Ibu Ajeng. Ibu Ajeng, would you like to answer this one, please? From anonymous attendee, I would like to raise a question to Ibu Ajeng related GETP financing. GETP is indeed brings funding and legitimacy, but also risk like debt and conditionalities. On Ibu Ajeng perspective, representing BPDLH, what is the most compelling reason or cost-benefit calculation that justifies Indonesia's acceptance of GETP framework? Is it primarily the long-term funding needs, the geopolitical positioning, or another strategic factor you see from within?
Yeah, thank you, Bulia. Thank you also for the question that already raised to us. But unfortunately, from our perspective from IEF, actually we are not in the position to provide an official answer regarding this because IEF is not the first. We are not regulator. We are service agencies under the Ministry of Finance, and we are not the institution that directly responsible for managing the JP or maybe ECM. However, from our perspective regarding the availability of the climate finance and also the financing for the transition, we believe that we need the long-term financing and also looking for how to make it the finance not only rely on grant, but we also create the innovative financing scheme and not only focus from the process but also the impact. Like I present before from IF, we have 12 safeguards, and we also focus on the impact morely for the local communities. So that's from our perspective, from the IF perspective. Maybe college from the SMI, because I see from her presentation most likely related to ETM, and also just we can edit this question, but that's the macro perspective from our side. Thank you, Bulia.
All right, thank you, Ibu Ajeng. And is there any additional things that you would like to add? Because your presentation, I kind of cut it short. I'm very sorry for that. If you would add several, things that you would like to add, you can go ahead now.
Yeah, maybe because the nature from IF is different from the other institution. We are services agency, and our thematics also related to energy, but other side we also focus on the impact. So we are not only focused for the profit, but we more focus on the impact and how it relate to SDGs and how it get benefit to the local communities on the ground. So for the energy and also financings, energy, all the project they come to us most likely grant. And like I said and present before, the one project that we will conduct in the next months is related to the multi-stakeholder platform for the WOLCOT, a woman-led co-transition on just transitions. So I'm so happy also in this event I can announce regarding this, because in Bold establish this, we will also for some partner from some organization, also CSO from Indonesia in the multi-stakeholder platform. We also will invite them to make a recommendation and also perspective from the CSO side, not only international, but also in the local region that related and the project that related to the energy transitions project, maybe in the Sumatra or maybe in the Java like Cirebon, but we still conduct and we still research what the best approach to establish this platform. I also see Bu Putih before in the ADB session, yeah, because the platform is supported by ADB and it's grant. So we so happy to discuss with other institution and also CSO organization how to make it just transitions that sweet with the especially for the woman, because when we talk about just transition, the jargon is no one left behind. Also for this platform, we want to make an idea platform that not only exists when the project exists, but it will sustain. Whether the project is already finished, we also want the platforms to sustain and make a place for the others institution, not only for the national, also local, that can put their aspirations, perspective, how the Indonesians need to make a recommendation in the next futures, in the next years regarding the just transition framework, regarding the policies from the MMR maybe or PLN that need to take out the recommendation policy based on their recommendations. I think that's for me. Thank you, Bulia.
Makasih Bu Ajeng. All right, next we have question for Miss Eileen. I think we can answer two, right? This is from Andrea Lim and Lin Song. First one is South Korea interested in coal transition carbon credits as a means of financing its transition. And the second one is quite a long one. Korean renewable developers can borrow at much lower interest rates because as a rich country is perceived to have much lower risk than poorer countries like Indonesia, where developers have to borrow at almost 10% interest rate for the same kind of projects. How is it just to use public money to de-risk renewable projects in Korea that are already perceived by investors as low risk? Does that crowd out poorer countries like Indonesia who need the public money more? The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So, first to the first question, I think I can answer that quite quickly. As for transition credits, so SFOC is following up on the discussions as well because it's emerging a lot in the region. But for Korea's own domestic transition, Korea basically has relatively advanced domestic mechanisms, including, for example, the ETS and green finance frameworks. So for domestic coal transition, the key would less be the absence of finance, but more about redirecting existing finance toward clean energy. So for the transition credit, it's more that you need to actually scale up financing and get more investment. Of course, Korea still needs more finance, but the transition credit, as far as we followed up on it, is more something that is good for developing countries because they have much more coal power plants and also younger ones. So in that sense, it could be an opportunity for Korea, but if for Korea, probably more for the overseas assets, because Korea also has like its largest electricity utility or main sole electricity utility has overseas assets on coal in Indonesia, the Philippines, Vietnam, and more. So for those, it could actually be an option to look into transition credits, but I don't think that the government would also look into transition credits for its own. Like, I think they have some kind of research on it, but I'm not really sure if it's completely considered as one option. And then let me have a look at the second question again, because yes, it was quite long. Um, 1 second. So for the public finance and the just transition, I'm not sure, maybe I didn't explain it um, detailed enough earlier, but for the just part, there needs to be financing. So as I said earlier in the presentation, there are 3 regions that are heavily dependent on coal, and those are Chungnam, Gangwon, and Incheon. And for those communities or for those who are working in the coal sector, they definitely there will need to be financing going into the transition or into the reskilling of those workers or of the transitioning of the economy of those regions itself to renewable energy. And in that sense, it's true that the interest rates for borrowing is quite low. But then what I just said for my previous answer, Korea has like the electricity utility KEPCO has a monopoly over the electricity generation and provision in Korea, which makes it quite difficult because KEPCO is one that is heavily dependent and continues to be dependent on coal power. So yes, it would be easier or less risky for investors to come in for renewable developers, but this is at the moment not really happening because of how the power market is structured. And for that, the government, because it's so intertwined, like the electricity utility and the coal power plants, and then the government providing money, the government would first need to give at least public financing to de-risk projects and to send market signals that actually there will be a transition to renewable energy. I hope that answers your question. Oh, yeah.
I don't think she can respond to this one, but I think it was a good answer. Thank you so much. We can move on to the next, Ibu Putih, from anonymous attendee. You have several questions here. First one. As we knew that PTSME now is the special mission vehicle of GETP appointed by the Minister of Finance, related to financing mechanism, how does PTSME support mitigating the risk that GETP becomes a debt-led transition rather than a just transition, since loans ratio is dominating the GETP program? And other than that, in your perspective, what do you think the most suitable strategy or program to maximizing the GETP funds being used effectively?
Okay, thank you
Uh,
very much
Yeah,
for
maybe
reading the
one by
question.
one, because all the
Yeah.
questions are like very long.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for the question. So first of all, I would like to clarify that SMI is not JETP. So SMI is appointed by the Ministry of Finance to become the ETM country platform manager. It's a different mechanism. And it's not similar to JETP. As you can see in my previous slide, we coordinate together with JETP in supporting the energy transitions in Indonesia. So yeah, I would like to clarify. So first, SMS ETM country platform manager, and the second JETP. JETP is it's a partnership program, which is actually like a established through like a joint committee commitment between the 10 member countries, I think now maybe 9 because US already exit, with the government of Indonesia. So within this JETP joint commitment, so the JETP partner, they are committing that they would mobilize 20 billions of funding to Indonesia. So the 20 billions will consist of 10 will be from the public fund, which means from the countries. So I think there are Germany, Canada, EU, France, and so on. And while by the other 10 billion is from the G funds, which is like a coalition of commercial banks. So in mobilizing the JETP funding, so in mobilizing the JETP funding, so the funding can be mobilized directly from their development banks. So for example, from World Bank or from ADB or from KfW to the project. So for example, maybe directly to the PLN, or they can also do like indirect mobilizations, which is where they can do it through PTSMI. So for us, the way that we coordinate with JETP is that some of the JETP funding can be mobilized through PTSMI, but it doesn't mean that all of the JETP funding have to go through PTSMI, because there are many parts of the funding that is actually being dispersed directly to the PLN, for example, or to the project owner. So that's the first question. So second, on the loans ratio, I think it really depends on the appetite and the availability of the donor country, because for the JETP, the funding comes from this country. So there is several commitment of grants, of course, but we know that in the commitment, the loan is more dominant. I'm not sure if I can really say why it's like that, because it's actually the commitment from the government. But maybe if I think my personal perspective is because renewable energy is actually there's a business model, right, to support this kind of a project. So for example, when you're building solar PV or like mini hydro project, you will get a revenue from that. Maybe it's going to be like marginal, but it doesn't mean that it has to be financed purely by 100% grant. Maybe it's one of the considerations also why the funding is more towards the loan instrument rather the grant. But that's my personal perspective. And then the last one, how to what do you think the most suitable strategy program to maximize the JETP funds? I think it needs to be coordinated to be able to maximize it and understanding what kind of instruments available there. So because maybe the exam maybe it can be trying to like see from the projects available which one that is already visible and which one is still like marginal and still need the gaps. Hopefully it will be able to maximize the funding, whereby like if the project is already commercially visible, then I think pure loan should be able to cover this kind of project. But if there's a project with like maybe like higher economic impact, but the project is not really economically, not financially feasible, then that's where we can deploy like loan with a combination of grant instrument. I hope it answers the question, Miss Leah.
All right, thank you so much for the amazing answers. And the second one, what's the status of Cirebon 1 ETM project?
Okay, for the Cirebon one, I think we can see already in the news that the government has announced that this project is not moving forwards. And I think you can see also from the commitment from the government of Indonesia that in relation to energy transitions, I think the government is going to be more focused on like developing the new renewable energy, and also maybe expanding and upgrading the transmission and distribution system. It's a bit different because I think previously when we were working on this Irwan project, the direction from the government is that the early retirement can be like one of the, I think one of the main instrument to support energy transition. But as things have been evolving now, I think the early retirement is not really the only solution. So there are other solutions, for example, in exploiting the renewable energy, or maybe exploring other kinds of coal phase out, maybe through us like the co-firing or so on. So I think based on the decisions from the government, the Cirebon project is not moving forward for now.
Okay. And another one, this is the last one for this session. As a GCF accredited entity, how does PTSME view the utilization of Green Climate Fund of funding to support energy transition efforts in developing countries, particularly in Indonesia? In your view, what are the key opportunities and challenges in scaling up access to GCF financing or for a just and inclusive energy transition?
Yes, yeah. Related to the GCF, so yes, SMA is the accredited entity of the GCF, and we're actually currently right now in the process of preparing like a funding proposal to support the energy transitions in Indonesia. So on this program, now we have received the project preparation grant from the GCF, and now we're in the part of project preparations with the aim that later we will be able to submit the funding proposal for this facility. So basically, this facility, what we're aiming to do is to support renewable energy financing of renewable energy projects for small to medium scale, and with a more focus in like remote areas or like eastern part of Indonesia. Why we're proposing this kind of instruments? Because we think that for like large scale like projects, there are already many funders interested to do so, like under MDBs and so on. And whereby I think from the GCFCs they can provide this concessionality. What they would like to see is that they would like to understand where is the gap. So their idea is that their concessional funding would be able to address will be able to be put into like the right place. So that's why we are developing this right now, because we know that especially in the remote areas of Indonesia, talking about renewable energy, sometimes the cost would be like a bit higher because you have like higher risk of like accessing the locations, for example, land and so on. So this is what we're going to do for the GCF. And yeah, on the success and challenges, well, it's a long process to be able to get the funding from the GCF. And I think one of the key aspect is that to be able to demonstrate to GCF how their fund will be able to support climate mitigation and adaptation, and it's not already being covered by any other institutions. Yes. Back to you,
Okay.
Miss.
All right, thank you very much. So I think that wraps up our first Q&A session. We still have two more speakers, and I understand that Miss Putih has to leave the event soon. But I would like to encourage the speakers who can remain now in the session to answer the rest of the questions by typing your answer down in there, because we have so many questions here that are still unanswered. And that would be great if you can like spend some time to typing them up. And if Miss Putih have a little bit of time, you may, but like I understand you're busy and then you have that schedule. And thank you very much for coming. And then see you next time around.
Yes,
All
thank you
right,
very much
ladies
for
and
inviting me,
gentlemen.
and apology that I
Thank
have to leave,
you.
Miss Leah. Thank you everyone for the
Okay.
opportunity.
All right. Thank you so much for you joining us and then giving the insights from PT SME perspective. Ladies and gentlemen, next we are going to the next speaker. We have Joe Chester Pagulayan from the Philippines, yeah, and continue with the broader ASEAN and regional perspectives on just transition finance. He is from Oxfam, Filipinas. And Cheng is a climate justice advocate and development practitioner whose work focuses on climate finance, low carbon development, gender justice, and inclusive transition pathways. Today, he will share reflections on the Philippines' experiences in financing just transition in the energy sector, as well as broader ASEAN perspectives. Cheng, thank you for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Hello, good afternoon from the Philippines. Let me just pull up my presentation. I hope you can see it now. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Before I start, maybe to introduce, our organization. Um, Unlike the previous speakers who are linked to the government, we are not representing the Philippine government, and also serves as a disclaimer. We are a nonprofit organization, and we are an international confederation of 22 organizations, and we're present in more than 90 countries. We are a humanitarian organization. We respond to emergencies. We are a development organization working on long-term projects such as on climate and energy transition. And we also campaign for policies. We also campaign and lobby for influencing our government and frameworks, that governs our work. And just to provide maybe a situationer of the Philippines energy sector, and this is based on the 2023 to 2050 Philippine Energy Plan. This is an overall highlight of how our energy sector is faced by challenges, with starting with our energy mix, which 71% of our installed capacity is from fossil fuels. The Luzon, these are the major islands in the Philippines. Luzon grid, 83% is from fossil fuel. From Mindanao is 69, and from Visayas, the central region, is 58%. And it remains, very centralized, privatized, and concentrated, where power generation, transmission, our distribution are mostly carried out by the private sector, compared to Indonesia, for example, which is a state-owned enterprise. And as of 2021, there were around 123 power plants. 15 plants alone, account for 55% of the power capacity. And we have 3 distribution utilities accounting to 38% of the market share. Around 199 electric cooperatives. These are the distribution utilities in the provinces that is in charge, of providing electricity to households in the province. And we are still highly dependent on imported fossil fuels, where this might be a bit outdated, but 49% of our primary energy supply is imported, mostly from the Middle East for oil, and Indonesia for coal, and expected to rise, as our reserves are getting depleted. And this is, just a comparative view of the 2021 and 2022 mix of our energy coming from fuels. So we can see that most of it, half of it, is from net imports from coal and oil. And it's fairly similar from 2021 to 2022, and it's still dominated by coal and oil sector. And the rest, are from renewable energy. We have some coal fleets in our mix, but it's still small compared to what we import. And and this is an overview of the net imports. I will not go in detail, but in the Philippine Energy Plan, we are the country, the Philippines, is envisioning 2 scenarios, where the clean energy scenario highlights, a strong and very aggressive push for offshore wind, which is a 19 gigawatt push for offshore wind And the clean energy scenario 2, on the other hand, is a more aggressive attempt for development of our offshore wind industry, which is at 50 gigawatts. And we can also see a gradual decrease of the coal and natural gas and oil dependence. Uh, Coal at 9.5% lower in the clean energy scenario 2, natural gas at 28.2 lower in the clean energy scenario 2. Sorry, I stand corrected, but oil is still has the same, expected or projected share in the mix in either of the scenarios. And this, presents us some knock-on effects or knock-on impacts because of our highly centralized systems and also limited space for small energy players. There's an underserved and unserved communities that are still unable to access, affordable or even reliable electricity, and that's about 1 million of households or Filipinos in the Philippines and mostly in the southern region. Still at costly power generation. In December 2021, residential rates was at 0.16 US dollars per kilowatt hour, and second to Singapore with the highest rates in the region. And we can also see how our contribution to the greenhouse gas emissions, and 51% of it is coming from the energy sector. We have enough energy supply to power the entire archipelago, but our thinning energy reserves presents us a very big crisis in the energy. And this is how the government intends to respond, to this crisis, because we have the Philippine Energy Transition Plan. A major component of it is a deployment of renewable energy projects, specifically for offshore, as we've seen in the clean energy scenarios. The government is also looking at smart green grid projects, or they call it the SGGP. It's the rapid expansion of a grid, specifically on batteries, to accommodate a new sizable renewable energy capacity and connect the demand centers with new sources of supply. The energy transition program also encourages voluntary retirement and repurposing of the existing coal-fired power plants. It's not yet a requirement. These are voluntary efforts for the private sector, but we've also seen from Aileen's presentation that ASEN is also leading. I think this a field in the region where it's voluntarily retiring its coal fleet and reinvesting to renewable energy. So the energy transition plan is looking at the combination of strategies like renewable energy expansion, energy efficiency strategies, using the usage of emerging and innovative technologies, and adoption of smarter grids through ICT and energy resiliency. But we're also looking at the global lens, how financing the transition is looking like. And in globally, this is a study or a report of analyzing two of the biggest multilateral climate-specific funds, like the GCF and the Climate Investment Funds. A shockingly low 2.8% of these funds for mitigation has gone towards supporting just transitions, and that's just about 630 million US dollars over more than a decade of implementation. And this only means, just $1 in every 35 has been spent in supporting just transition. So that includes labor rights, social protection, social dialogues, among other things. and mostly are going into the infrastructure, which are as important as the process that goes through with the transition. And less than one in 50 projects supported by both GCF and the CIF were found to be adequately listening to and supporting workers' rights, the women and community through just transition processes. You can look it up. It's a report by Action Aid. It has more very useful information on how just transition is being funded by these two multilateral funds. And
Hi,
zooming
Jane.
in, yeah.
Your time is almost up. If you can wrap
Okay.
this up, that would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, wrapping up on the Philippines, this is also coming from the energy transition plan. It allows 100% full foreign ownership in renewable energy projects. This is a highly contested and highly debated program, also providing sovereign guarantee for financing sustainable energy projects through the Sustainable Energy Credit Guarantee Facility of the Philippine Guarantee Corporation, and of course, issuing of 25-year green bonds by private corporations as part of its initiative for green and sustainability capital. But we also present some innovative ways and maybe to explore by governments to finance the transition by introducing rich polluters profit tax and excess profit tax. When properly designed, these taxes can raise over 1 trillion per year globally, while reducing the profitability gap between fossil fuels and renewables. So we'll transition away from fossil fuels, but also accelerating renewables. And the use of the revenues will be used for fair and green transition initiatives and ensuring that public legitimacy is at the center of the transition. I think that ends my presentation. I've been wrapping
All right.
towards the end, but you can
Yeah.
access those reports, and maybe I can answer some later.
Okay, thank you so much, Jeng. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, just shoot them in a Q&A box. We will have the second question and answer session later on. All right, next. Thank you very much, Jeng, for the insights. To see closer on the how the Philippines is doing the just transition. All right, session 5, we have Ms. Chaitra Nayak from the Asia Investor Group on Climate Change, or AIGCC. Hello. Chaitra leads the Just Transition Working Group at AIGCC and brings extensive experience in sustainable finance and climate-related investment strategies across Asian markets. Today, she will discuss financing just transition across Asian markets, including the opportunities and challenges in attracting private investment for energy transition. Chaitra, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. While the slides are being put up, I just want to introduce my organization. So we're Asia Investor Group of Climate Change. We're an investor member network. We have around 80 plus investor members and operate in around 11 Asian markets. And the combined sort of AUM, or the assets that our member organizations manage, is heavy. It stands at around 30 trillion. I can't see my slides. I think they're being presented, right?
No, not yet. I see yours.
Yes.
Yep, now I
Now
can see.
Thank you so much. So we recently, I'm just coming off of Ecosperity, attending that in Singapore. And if some of us know, it's one of the awaited events of the year, where a lot of private market participants sort of think about how to plan the energy transition and innovative finance. So I'm just coming off of that sort of conference. So and we hosted one conference on early signals and to capital allocation. So this is on the theme of a just transition. And we also had a day-long summit that we hosted. So I'm going to be sharing some statistics from that report to contextualize my initial framing. So moving to the next slide, I think
most of the speakers have covered quite a few elements. So I'm going to try to not be repetitive and focus on just basic market building principles for the just transition. So I'll do two things in my 10 minutes. So one is define the practical North Star. So show where the market should be considering in terms of financing a just transition. And the second one is also doing a quick recap of which instruments are producing evidence in terms of financing for a just transition. And most of you may know that we're quite early in the sense of seeing the capability of multiple instruments. I think I saw a question on which instrument is the most practical to fund a transition, and my short answer to that would be a combination of multiple instruments. But before we look at what's happening in the market, it helps to anchor what the genuine just transition is meant to achieve. So I think the popular sort of feeling is that just transition is about layering climate and social goals, which is honestly broadly the definition of sustainability. But just transition financing should mean, and this is something all of us should think about, is managing the social harm of a transition and equally distributing the benefits brought about the transition. So I'm just qualifying that definition in terms of financing the energy transition. So it should be centered around the transition itself, because there was a study done on a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusive KPIs are considered as transition elements when they're not technically contributing to the climate transition by itself. So 4 principles guide the best practice. They're on your screen here. So the first one is moving beyond social harm. The bar for just transition financing should be positive social outcomes. Think about things like benefit sharing, energy access agreements, and co-ownership. The second one is linking it to economic development. I think the bar is, especially in EMDs, I think I saw a lot of questions on how there are different interest rates and how EMDs have to share, have country risk premiums that they have to work around to finance transition. So yes, they should be rooted in emerging market and developed economies needs. So the context should be market-based, it should be place-based, and think about things like job diversification or wage growth. So most of these elements that I'm highlighting are catered to the people side after we focused a little bit on the energy side earlier in the presentation. And the third one is to consider the full stakeholder picture. So a lot of current sort of financing, or who's looking at just transition financing, is very legitimately focused on the coal sector, and the formal workers of the coal sector. But a genuine just transition would mean to include multiple stakeholders. It's impossible to include the full range of stakeholders, but be applicable for multiple stakeholders and be cognizant about the socio-demographic vulnerabilities of these stakeholders. And what I mean by that is thinking about migrant workers, thinking about gender responsive assessments. And the last one is commercial credibility. So best practice only scales if it's designed with active investor input. And that should be one of the primary goals of just transition financing. So let's keep this in mind while we go through this. Can we move to the next slide, please? So this is a report that we released earlier this week. This is the 7th edition of our State of Climate Transition. And for the first time, we evaluated how just transition is being actioned by Asia's investors. So the sample size for this investment survey is around 240 investors in the region. And you can see the split of asset owners and asset managers here below. So what I want to convey by both these sort of graphs here is that only 11% of investors, of the 240 investors, have a clear just transition strategy or have an approach on just transition. And if you had to look at that from AIGCC members, we are fully articulated at slightly higher, around 30% of the investors. So what that tells me is that we are not in execution mode. We're still sort of understanding the market. We're exploring. So it's not yet, just transition is not yet institutionalized in Asian markets. And that becomes very clear when you look at the right side or the right graph. So I've presented around 7 sort of labels on the right side. They are essentially parts of the investment cycle.
And what shows up here is that maximum investors are engaging with just transition as part of their stewardship or engagement perspective. So what that means is that they're engaging with their investee companies on things like affordability, reskilling, energy access. But if you look at how it's used in portfolio construction, the number drops to around 9%. So very few investors are looking at just transition financing in the portfolio construction part of an investment cycle. So what that means is the safe entry point today for just transition is stewardship and engagement, where 58% of our investors are sort of carrying this out on the theme of a just transition, and then followed by research integration and very less on portfolio construction. So currently, if I had to like sort of summarize this, it's not yet at the stage where we can say capital is being deployed to this theme. So which raises the obvious question, what's holding the market back? And unanimously, most of our investors in the survey said, one, it's the regulatory mandate, like how do policymakers sort of give the mandate to these investors to consider these extra financial issues. The second one is data. And then the third one is more on market design and investable structures. So going on to the next slide, I think I can skip this because a lot of my co-panelists have covered it. So I'll go to a snapshot of instruments. After we understood there are early signals in the ecosystem, and we understood investor stewardship is the main sort of angle from which Asian investors are pursuing just transition. I just wanted to give a cover of the snapshot of instruments that currently exist in the market. I think some of these were covered, like the ASEN and ADB's Just Transition Support Platform and Chiribon were already covered. Maybe I'll focus on the third last one and the last one because I want to sort of be additive to as part of my presentation. So the Allianz SDG Loan Fund is one instrument. So we had the portfolio manager from this fund recently sort of join us as part of our Just Transition working group that I lead. And it's a useful example. It is a blended finance example, and it is a private credit instrument. Sorry, can you move to the earlier slide? And for this slide, the relevance is not that Allianz Just Transition Fund is a pure just transition vehicle. It is to give an example that similar structures could be adapted for just transition themes such as SME resilience, inclusive employment, or the worker transition more broadly. So the structure to learn from this is how institutional capital can participate when developmental finance help manage the risk. Can you please move to the earlier slide? So in SDG Allianz Loan Fund, there was a structuring or capital stack that was developed where three organizations, sort of in addition, two other organizations in addition to Allianz participated in this, where there was a junior tranche and then there was catalytic capital. So together they were a blended finance vehicle. So Michael and Susan Delp Foundation, they were part of the catalytic capital, and FMO, which is a Dutch investor, was part of the junior tranche. So basically there were two layers which could absorb the risk, and which is why this fund could scale quite a bit. They fund sort of transitions in African and Asian markets across three SDGs, and that was one good example. And the last one is Amundi's Euro Corporate Bond. So this was actually one of the first examples of a just transition sort of bond that was named as such, but was changed because of EU naming rules. It has been deployed now in 2022, if I'm not mistaken. And it is a corporate bond. What they do is they focus on funding utilities that have demonstrated just transition awareness and just transition improvement in their scores. They have a rating scale that they use to find these sort of fixed income bonds, companies that could be part of that fixed income bond, and that rating scale goes from A to E. You can read more about this in the Just Transition Finance Lab published report. This was in 2024, if I'm not mistaken, towards the end of the year. They did it along with IHRB. I think the ADB's energy transition mechanism is also very important because it tries to solve for that hard problem of how to retire coal assets early without creating any shocks. So energy security shocks or affordability or livelihood shocks. I think the Chirabon case was intended to be a test case for early coal retirement, but it has shown how complex these transactions are. So the learning from this sort of transaction is not that the model failed, but it's more about that early coal retirement requires very tight alignment between all participants of that transaction. So between governments, between utilities, the lenders, off takers, and the communities. So it's a lot. We're thinking about a new way to structure instruments. So I think one of the sort of takeaways from that transaction that we were sort of looking forward to is that there should be like much tighter alignment from all the stakeholders in that transaction. If we move to the next slide, I think I have
You
4 minutes,
you
right?
have one more. Yeah, you have one
1
more
minute.
minute. Yeah.
Okay, we go to the last slide in that case. So my last slide is on how just transition finance flows to date for MDB specifically. So the MDBs are giving us a positive example or a practical example of how to invest in a just transition. So this sort of slide, what it says is, in addition to my previous panelist comment that only 2.8% of multilateral finance has gone to the theme, what it says that there are ways to invest in the just transition outside of reskilling, and MDBs are showing us the pathway. So if you look at the last bar on this chart, you can see that sustainable development funds are sort of investing across multiple just transition themes, which are community stakeholders, livelihood, and resources. So it's appearing across a wider set of development themes. So access to services, sustainable livelihoods, MSME finance, public transport, water, land use, and nature-based services. These are also being invested by MDB bonds. Of course, this is also because they have the mandate. So the strongest concentration of just transition theme is in the sustainable development bonds. And then what I want to highlight also, my last point is that even though they're showing us the practical pathway to sort of invest in this theme, there is a limitation because a lot of current reporting on these particular bonds is relatively conventional metrics. So things like number of beneficiaries, number of loans, jobs created, people trained, land area restored. So we may know that how many people receive the training, but not whether their long-term income improved. So we may know household gains, access to infrastructure, but not whether the service was affordable and resilient over time. And that's what we want to sort of look at when financing a just transition, because it has to be additive. So the takeaway is not that nothing is happening. Investors are early on this theme. Early practice is ahead of capital flows, and MDBs are sort of beginning to build that language. So I'll just stop here.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So we have two speakers already present their presentations, and now before we move to the Q&A section, I would like to invite Chaitra and Cheng to join us to comment on each other. Do you have any comments, perspective regarding each other's presentations? Maybe we can start with Cheng.
Yeah, I think I have nothing to add. I think it reinforces, some of our presentations earlier about, how just transition is being funded in different multilateral climate funds and even multilateral development banks. And I think those are also important bits while we're talking about, financing the technologies, the innovations that comes with it. The process, the just transition process, is the human side of all these energy transitions that we're talking about. So, yeah, I think we kind of reinforce those messages in both our presentations.
Okay, thank you. What about Chaitra?
Thanks. I think maybe it was nice to hear about Philippines' perspective on the energy transition. So really enjoyed the presentation. I think the last slide on what could be, there is sort of thinking that finance is scarce, and he gave us two examples of what could sort of be sort of redirected towards just transition funding. So that was nice to see. I maybe wanted to add one thing that we're working with investors to on some of these pain points of what needs to happen on just transition financing. We have a mix of investors that are more mature on the theme on a just transition financing, somewhere in the middle, focusing a lot on engagement and stewardship, and then a lot of other investors who are understanding how to do this in public markets. So we have done 1 year of capacity building on this theme, and we're moving the discussion since the last year, in the last sort of quarter of last year on the financing bit. But a lot of sort of initial work for anyone who's just discovering this is to understand the landscape, because there are different perspectives of a just transition I see going around. So I think aligning on, okay, we want to sort of look at the stakeholders, and we're looking at people-centric elements of a just transition. I think that's something, if all of the market participants could align on, I think we'd get there sort of much faster. I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. And we are ready for the next Q&A section, and I would like to invite Miss Eileen and Miss Ajeng to come on board too, and also perhaps to hear the response on each other's presentation. Is Miss Eileen still with us? All right, Ibu Ajeng, do you have any comments on the other presenters?
Yes, Bulia, thank you. For others presentation is quite interesting to see and hearing like Cheng what are the strategies done by Philippines to build their energy transitions. But maybe if I want to explore more, not the challenge not only from financings, I want to exchange. Is there any challenges that really big barriers, but on Philippines towards to the renewable energy, towards to just transition energy, but not on financings? Is there any others challenge? Yeah, this maybe quite interesting and also a learning experiment from Philippines. Thank you.
Yeah, I think also a challenge, a perennial challenge for the Philippines is we have very progressive policies. Progressive in the sense that on paper I mean it's advanced compared to its Asian neighbors, but it still has no weak implementation. We have the Renewable Energy Act since the 2008, and under the Renewable Energy Act, it has different programs like the Green Energy Option Program, the Green Energy Option Program, which is both has very similar names, but they're not the same in terms of scale, because the auction program is for more for bigger energy users that they can switch to renewable energy, while for the energy option is for households where they can decide how much of their electricity is sourced from renewable energy. So we all have those policies, but it still hasn't been implemented widely, and of course there are bureaucratic delays in the process. Permitting processes are still very difficult, even for big companies. With the resource and with the capacities that they have, it's still difficult for them to access. But of course, one of the things that we are also pushing is we don't rush the permitting process, because the just transition aspect of those are getting through the correct way, consultation with the stakeholders, with the communities, because that usually gets in the way. If you don't do it right at the very beginning, you'll get into that point where it will be met with resistance, because you didn't follow a correct process. So I think those are some challenges that we have in the Philippines.
Okay, Ibu Ajeng, does that answer your question? All right. Miss Eileen, do you have any comments on, the other speakers' questions?
No comments from my side. For me, it was just interesting to hear also what the other speakers were saying. And I also just saw the questions in the questions answer sheet. And for me, it would actually be exactly the same question as the last one that came for AIGCC.
Okay. Alrighty then. I see that there's let me check whether there's any new questions from the attendee. Yeah, for the AIGCC, what are the things that Asian country must consider in order to attract more private investment in financing their just energy transition plans?
Thank you. I can take that. So I think the countries need to sort of recognize that private capital is not only looking for ambition. So whenever we speak to investors, the first thing that they sort of ask us is on transition pathways that are bankable. So for just energy transition plan to attract more sort of private investments, countries need to make the risk return profile clearer. So there are few technologies that have sort of achieved that commercial capital and they can be sort of funded. But what about the new sort of technologies or even new sectors that are going to be, or this current hard to abate sectors that are sort of decarbonizing? So I think the few things that I would sort of like to see happening in the next sort of 2-3 years is there should be some clear policy direction on credible transition planning. So investors need clarity on the direction of travel, whether it's coal phase down, whether it's renewable procurement plans. So without this, there is a lot of uncertainty in pricing. And we already heard that there's a high cost of capital in emerging markets more broadly. So this adds to the sort of risk elements. And also a lot of, say, investors are maybe not present in home markets or they don't have home market teams. So, educating sort of investors on these challenges also becomes important for any investor that does not have like a local team here. So in addition to national targets that we have seen come up, and some of the Asian countries really have strong targets, but things like grid upgrades or renewable IPPs or geothermal transmission related sectors, or even distributed renewables is becoming a thing now, or energy efficiency platforms. I think it's not about capital availability, but how do you sort of prepare this project to fit into the sort of risk return profile framework of a investor who's considering to invest. And we also need to do a little bit of more digging deep on how to sort of use concessional capital. I think we talked a lot about blended finance, but there's a real challenge in doing blended. We had a recent roundtable where one of our sort of funders suggested, like, can we not look at blended as a vertical stack? Can we look at blended having multiple sort of capital, but multiple types of capital come in to fund just transition? Because a lot of just transition financing, especially if you look at the people-centric elements, they are non-commercial. So there has to be revenue that comes off the just transition sort of type of project that you're funding. So we need to think a little bit deeper on how to sort of do blended better. And then I think the last one, I think we speak about this a lot, it's to make the just transition component measurable. So I did speak on a few limitations on how number of beneficiaries is not enough in terms of qualifying, okay, these number of beneficiary, let's go one step below. What was the sort of, was the equal benefits distributed to these stakeholders? Did their quality of life improve? I mean, these are high level questions, but how can we make the project that you're investing in more measurable? So maybe that's something I'd like to add, what we need to do for Asian markets.
Okay, thank you, Chaitra. We actually have one question for Eileen. What is the role of subnational governments in financing South Korea's energy transition? And has the central government developed a strategy to enable the subnational actors to access greater financing for the energy transition? Thank you. Indonesia can learn a lot from this.
So for subnational governments, it's actually an interesting momentum at this time because the subnational elections are coming up. And it's especially in terms of coal, as I said, it's interesting to see what their role is because there are those coal-heavy regions, and they each take also their own initiatives. So, for example, one region, the Chungnam region, also has their own just transition fund. And with this just transition fund, they're also looking into how they can succeed in phasing out coal, but more into refinancing into renewable projects, especially offshore wind in that region. I'm just checking the question again because I think there was a second part of the question, but develop this yes, the central government strategy to
Yeah.
enable the subnational actors. I think for the strategy, it might be like there is no specific strategy at the moment, but it might be included in the upcoming KGX that I mentioned earlier, the Korea Green Transition Strategy. So it should basically be included. Like it's not as subnational governments should do this or that, but they have the coal power plants itself included in the electricity plans on how they should be phased out, when they should be phased out, but also not with the financing specifically. And it should also be included in the upcoming for the remaining ones. And then how exactly the subnational governments might be included. This could be part of the upcoming KGX, but there is not a lot of information at the moment. Like for KGX, it will also include industrial decarbonization, renewable energy expansion, and so on. So this might be part of it.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I actually really enjoy this because I can learn a different perspective. Such a great webinar and great platform organized by IRIT, yeah, to bring all these different perspective together in Asian country. Different from different institutions in different countries, and it is not surprising that we share many challenges together, and then we can exchange opportunities. And before we conclude, I would like to offer space for each speaker to provide the closing remarks, a brief one, each of you, and then we can conclude. And don't forget for the participants to fill in the survey that is in the chat box, so that you can get access to the materials from the speakers today. Maybe we can start from Eileen.
Yes, thank you so much for also the invitation again. And it was really interesting to also hear from the other participants, from their experience and from their perspectives. Like just maybe one point I can just say again, or what I mentioned also earlier in the presentation. I think it's really important to talk about this just transition topic because it sometimes gets a bit lost, especially when talking about financing. It's a bit like, okay, we need to phase out coal or we need to invest more in renewable energies, but there are a lot of communities who are actually part of this transition. So I really like that this is part of this webinar, and it was really interesting to hear from the other participants. So thank you so much.
All right, thank you for providing us insights and all the learning experiences from South Korea. Ibu Ajeng.
Yes, Wulia, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me. So glad to hear a perspective from others institution, other countries, like Wulia already said before, and I believe the collaboration across path between other countries, other institutions, only from government side, also CSO, investor, private, is very important when we are thinking about how to finance the just transitions. And like Bu Aileen said also, it's not only the matters of finance, but also how the impact to the local community and also the people behind that impact from the just energy transitions that need also the benefit from this financing of just transitions. And thank you, and looking forward to contribute and continue collaboration with you all. Thank you.
Makasih, thank you Ibu Ajeng. There's one question from the participant about the link, so maybe the organizer might want to see that. He said or she said the link might not be working. All right, next I would invite Cheng to provide a brief closing remarks.
Yeah, similar to others, thank you for inviting us to this space. It has been a refreshing to also discuss, different ways of financing just energy transition from domestic, public finance and private finance. But also my presentation, although it's a bit fast, towards the end, it talks about, also exploring financial, regulatory, and macroeconomic reforms as a potential, resource stabilization strategy for, enabling green and just energy transition. So yeah, I think we can continue, all these discussions in the future, and I believe, IRID, Parabukas, and FSOC will also continue all these types of conversations, talking about, innovative ways of enabling and financing just transition, not only in Asia but in also global spaces. Yeah, thank you again.
Thank you, Cheng. Chaitra?
Thank you. Thank you to my co-panelists and to IRID for organizing. I think my takeaway from this is, even though we're really early in the financing conversation, we're not waiting for that perfect asset class to fund this. So I'm looking forward. I think a lot of collaboration needed among various types of participants I mentioned earlier. So yeah, looking forward to stay in touch with you all and be part of this. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we heard valuable perspectives regarding the role of domestic finance, public institutions, state-owned enterprises, private investment, regional cooperation, and community-centered approaches in supporting transition efforts across Asia. Despite different country contexts, many shared challenges also emerged throughout today's discussion, as we talk about, right? Such as policy coordination, investment rates, institutional capacity, and the need to ensure that vulnerable communities are not left behind during the transition process. So, on behalf of the organizers, I would like to sincerely thank you for our distinguished speakers for putting the time to put together all these presentations. I know it'll take time, and then share it with the audience, and also for the expertise and insights today, and also for answering some of the burning questions for some of you. And I would also like to thank all participants for your active engagement. You have many good questions and thoughtful questions throughout the session. Yeah. And as mentioned earlier, this webinar is part of a broader collaborative series of on just energy transition in Asia. And we hope today's discussion can contribute to continued dialogue. So not only stop here, but still continuing and collaboration moving forward. And thank you once again. I'm Lia Zakia. We wish you a wonderful day ahead. Good afternoon. Bye.
Bye, thank